Do you want to be the best, like no one ever was? Well, I can't guarantee that it'll make you the best. It will make you feel like you are the best, and that is what is important. This build has it all: speed, evasion, crowd control, survivability, and most importantly, big damn, to make you feel like an evading god who can't be stopped. The only downside of this build is that you may have trouble sleeping at night from all of the dopamine. You've been warned. In this guide, we'll talk about it all: the general playstyle, what is different from my previous build for this season, the skills we take, the skill tree, the gear, the aspects, the hearts, and the Paragon board. But let's look at the playstyle here. So the playstyle of the build is to play very mid-range to close range. So sometimes we jump in, sometimes we stay more at mid-range. And as we get into later stages, later nightmare dungeons, we do tend to play a little bit mid to farther range. But while we're leveling, we're pretty safe and tanky, so we can play a bit more close range. What you'll notice is that I start an engagement typically by shadow stepping in, or I'll just simply drop a poison trap and let the mobs come to me. And we can shadow step in when our stun is up. So later on you'll see I take an aspect that stuns everything every 20 seconds. So that's really nice. And then we also use a taunt gem in order to CC the mobs and keep us safe. And another thing that you'll notice here is during this fight, what I try and do is use my imbuements and then hit rapid fire and then evade immediately after I rapid fire, which is how you see that I keep on moving and keep on evading. And we'll talk about how you can evade infinitely later on. And here you see a boss fight, so you can see that this does a lot of damage to bosses. So it chunks them down in about 2 chunks there, and then the boss is dead. So before we go over the build, one thing I just want to mention is that if you haven't seen the rapid fire series that I put out before this season patch, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I go over everything from maximizing your damage to survival, and after you watch this video, go check those out. It'll help you out a lot in understanding all the various mechanics. Alright, so first off, let's talk about the new season gems, because this is the thing that really changes up our playstyle quite a bit, as well as the build. So the first thing, and this is the biggest thing, which is the Barber. So you've probably heard a lot about the Barber. So what does it do? So critical strikes and all subsequent damage within 3.5 seconds is absorbed by your target. Then the absorbed damage erupts onto surrounding enemies. Stored damage is increased by 14% per second. So in other words, when you make a critical hit, then all the damage on that target starts getting absorbed, and then it releases that in a big old explosion that gets amplified by 14% damage per second, multiplicatively. So this is huge, because this turns our single target damage, which rapid fire has a ton of, into AOE damage, just exploding everything around it. And this is enormous. And we'll come back to this in a second because it does cause some problems too, this one. Secondly, we take Trickery, and what this does is it allows us to taunt all of the enemies. So we use Poison Trap in order to create the Shadow Decoy, which then taunts everything around it. And one thing that's nice to know about this is this does work with range mobs, and the range mobs will actually stop attacking and just walk into it, which is really great because then we can AoE them down. And then the third thing that we take is Revenge. So this thing basically is used as a way to reduce the damage that we're taking. So we can get this up to 20%. Incoming damage is suppressed, and this just acts like an additional 20% damage reduction stack, which is huge. And then we can also get a little bit of damage from it, but the damage is basically nothing, so don't worry about that. Now back to the Barber. So along with helping us out a lot with damage, we do have to change some stuff in the build, because unfortunately Lucky Hit doesn't work on mobs that are absorbing. So when you critical strike them, they start absorbing everything, and then anything that's a Lucky Hit just gets absorbed as well, so it doesn't work. So anything that's a Lucky Hit is out of the build. And this includes Umbrus, which allows us to create our Dark Shroud stacks, and because of that, I don't feel that I can keep Dark Shroud up enough, so I also remove that from the build. So that's a little unfortunate because this does hurt our survivability, but Barber is just so good, I don't see how we cannot take it. All right, now let's talk about the gear. So we're taking some aspects here. So first off, we have disobedience, and ideally, actually, I would like disobedience to be on the amulet to buff that up a bit. I just haven't found a good disobedience yet to put it on there. And then we also take might for more damage reduction, and then we take edge masters for just more damage. And this one I'll come back to in a second here. Let's look at the others though. The boots, we take aspect of audacity, so this allows me to jump in every 20 seconds and stun everything so that I don't die. And then I take aspect of repeating, and this has some really nice synergy with Barber as well as Exploit that we'll come back to in a moment. And then on my amulet here, I am taking the smoke grenade every 45 seconds, then makes you dodge for 10 seconds. And instead of this, I would actually probably choose cheat aspect, but I need to test it more. So either this or cheat aspect could be a good possibility here. And then the expectant aspect, so this just increases our damage as we use our basic attack 1, 2, or 3 times to increase our damage more and more and more, 8% each time. And then we have accelerating aspect, which increases our attack speed when we critical hit with a core skill. And then we have rapid aspect, which increases our basic skills attack speed. And basic skills attack speed is huge in this build because most of the time we're using puncture. And then rapid fire, we just animation cancel anyways, so its attack speed actually doesn't matter that much. And then we have Condemnation, which allows us to get a big old damage boost when we spend 3 combo points. And also it can allow us to generate combo points faster as well. And on the pants, we have Aspect of Lethal Dusk. And this is a new addition. So one of the issues that we had with this patch is that they nerfed siphoning strikes. So we don't have a great way to heal anymore. So I was trying to find some way for us to heal some more. And this is one way that we could do it. So what it says is evading through an enemy infected by a shadow imbuement grants stealth for 4 seconds. And then when you break stealth with an attack, it grants you 3% or up to 5% max life on kill for 6 seconds. One of the changes that we make in this build is I'm also taking Mending Obscurity, which says while stealth, you heal for 12% per second of your max life. So after we evade through a mob that has shadow imbuement on it, then we can take a pause for a second if we need to in order to start healing very rapidly. So this can heal us for half our health over those 4 seconds if we need to. And this does take a little bit of practice getting used to because you do have to be close to the enemy, and then you have to evade directly through the enemy in order for this to work. And basically what you do is you use your shadow imbuement and then immediately after rapid firing evade directly through them and then use stealth and start to heal. So it works pretty nicely, but you could change it if you don't like it. So on the builder here, I have some potential other possibilities of aspects that you might want to consider and play around with because this build is new, so I'm going to be experimenting myself and possibly changing some things out. So for example, here are some possible other boot options. So some people really like Penitent Greaves for getting more chill and 10% more damage. And this could also be good to pair up with the cheats aspect. If you want some more damage versus frozen, you could pick up the frostbitten aspect for 25% more crit damage versus frozen, always nice. You could also take the Ravager aspect, which gives you a second shadow step charge. This can be good if you're worried about getting it crowd controlled. And also you could take the Ghostwalker aspect for speed farming. This just gives you more movement speed. That Craven aspect, this is a new one. This one's actually pretty interesting. It gives us up to 40% movement speed when moving away from crowd-controlled enemies. Like they have to be slowed or chilled. And this could be very good for kiting for late game. And then if you want a more speed farming variation, you could even pick up Aspect of Quickening Fog. And what you could do is pick up Dash instead of Poison Trap. So get rid of Poison Trap, pick up Dash. And the cool thing about this aspect is that it drops a Smoke Grenade, and this will proc the Taunt Gem. And then some possible other Pants and Helm defense options. One thing to keep in mind is that if you don't use Lethal Dust, make sure you remove the Minion Obscurity and put in Trap Mastery for more crit. And then you could take the Aspect of Crowded Sage. This is just an easy heal when you're close to enemies. You could take the Aspect of Elusive Menace, which this increases your dodge chance, but you do need to have both your stacks of close quarters combat up. And then you could also take Aspect of the Protector if you just want something easier for having a barrier versus elites. And then you also saw on my gear the Escape Artist aspect, which gives you just some dodges. And for the specialization, we do take combo points. So we have to generate 3 combo points and then use it in order to get the maximum damage. And let's take a look at our skill tree. So what we do is we take Puncture through Fundamental Puncture to get the 3 blades. This gives us a vulnerable, as well as Puncture can slow the targets every 3 hits. And then we have Rapid Fire. So Rapid Fire we take through Advanced Rapid Fire. So as it says here, it increases your critical strike damage. This is a 30% multiplier for 5 seconds after you evade. This is why we evade so much in the build. And we do take 30 for extra 12% close damage reduction. Then we take Shadow Step through Disciplined Shadow Step, which reduces the cooldown by 3 seconds. When it damages an enemy you have not hit with Shadow Step in the last 4 seconds. This just allows us to use more Shadow Steps and allows us to not have to worry about getting crowd control stun locked as much. And we do take Weapon Mastery for more damage. Here we take Agile for more dodge, as well as Many Obscurity as we talked about. And we take Exploit and Malice. One thing you'll notice here is that I do have 6 in Exploit, and this is pretty ideal for the Barber. So you'll see I have +3 ranks of Exploit on my amulet, and the reason for that is it increases our damage to healthy and injured enemies. And the way the Barber works is on our first critical strike, which will probably be our first hit a lot of the times, is it'll start absorbing the damage on the enemy. And therefore they will be healthy during that time, and we'll get that 36% increased damage the whole time while we are just bursting into them and having it continue to absorb onto them. So this is pretty huge. I would say this is best in the slot with the Barber. And then we have Poison Trap through countering Poison Trap to get some resets on our cooldowns for imbuements. And then we do take just 1 point into Shadow Imbuement. Most of our damage is going to be coming from the Barber anyways, so we're not too worried about the damage from the explosions. We just want the vulnerable effect as well as just the increased damage that we get from imbuing our rapid fire. And then we also do take Cold Imbuement. This is really where we get our huge single target damage from, as well as mixed cold imbuements for an extra 20% damage to crowd controlled enemies and 40% for frozen. And then we do take debilitating toxins. This is just for more damage reduction, as well as some more attack speed here. And then we do take precision imbuement for more critical strike chance. And we do take 1 point in innervation in order to help with energy, as well as haste to help us out with increased movement speed and possibly increase attack speed as well. And then we take close quarters combat. If you want to play this build close to mid-range, close quarters combat is great. If you want to play it more mid to far range, I would take precision. That way you can stand back a little bit more and you don't have to worry about diving in. All right, let's take a look at the Paragon board. So the first board here is pretty simple. We just take combat. So this allows us to increase our critical strike damage by quite a lot. So it's pretty nice. And then we go into the Cunning Stratagem board, and this allows us to get the Cunning Stratagem Legendary node, which gives us 2 more arrows, and this increases our damage by 25%. And we take exploit as our second glyph here, which allows us to spread our vulnerable a lot. And this is actually huge with repeating. So the way this works is, let's say you are here, you're the red circle here, and then your enemies are the white circle. And you shoot into this first enemy here, and with the repeating aspect, it's going to ricochet and hit another enemy. And the first enemy is going to start absorbing the rapid fire, as well as the second enemy is going to shortly start absorbing the rapid fire after that. And what'll happen is the first enemy is going to explode first, which is then going to put vulnerable on all of the enemies around it. And then the second enemy is going to explode right after that, which is then going to do lots of damage to all of the vulnerable enemies. So this is why I want to take repeating on my bow and not edge masters, because it's actually not going to be the first mob that does all the damage. It's actually going to be the second mob that does most of the damage, because the second mob is going to be hitting mobs that are vulnerable, which can give us like triple damage. And then the third board, we come on up here and we get Eldritch Bounty. So this is going to give us some major damage increases to our imbuements, which early on is going to help us out a lot. And then we also take Ranger, which is going to give us more damage to our marksman skills. And then we come on over here. So it's a little bit different than a lot of boards. So instead of going in a line, we're going to come back here and go this way. And then take Exploit Weakness and get Infusion, as well as the Legendary node. And the reason why I'm taking Exploit Weakness is because in the last patch, they nerfed vulnerability, but they only nerfed it to gear. They didn't nerf it to the Paragon board. And what this does is the net effect is that the vulnerability on the Paragon board ends up being worth more now because of that. And then the fifth board here is we take Cheap Shot. So we end up going down here and getting Control. And this is the leveling board. Now, there's another board that I'd actually recommend when you get to endgame and you've taken all of the points here, then you can actually transition really nicely into the endgame board, which I'll show you here. So this is the endgame board. And what you'll notice is it's the same exact board here, except I did one thing, is I moved the board that was here over to here. So this becomes my last board. And this is why I set up the board in this kind of weird way before, because it's going to allow you to transition to the endgame board much easier and cheaper, because now you only have to change one board instead of all of the boards. And you might say, like, why put it here and not over there? Well, it's because the rare nodes cost a different amount to get the second bonus there. And the Eldritch Bounty rare nodes aren't very good in the end game. So I put them last so that I don't need to bother getting a ton of stats in order to get these rare nodes. Versus Cheap Shot actually has a lot of really good rare nodes, and we'll also be picking up a few more rare nodes in the end game too. So for example here, as well as here, and we'll want to get all those various rare node bonuses. And be sure to check back for future updates. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.